TNCRadio.LIVE, your commercial driver navigation station.
Good afternoon. This is TNCRadio.LIVE, and this is the Truckers Network Radio Show with your host, Shelley Johnson.
Thank you, Tom. I should call you Tom McMahon. I appreciate that. This is the Truckers Network Radio Show. I'm Shelley Johnson. We're all about the news, talk, information, and entertainment that drivers want to hear here on TNCRadio.LIVE. You know, many of our trucker listeners are veterans, and many have been fans of shows like JAG and Law and Order. Many of our driver listeners are interested in the legal defense process, so that I thought our guest today would be especially interesting. Michael Waddington is a former Army JAG attorney and author of Battle Mind, a military legal thriller. He's been involved in some of celebrity and high-profile criminal cases involving the U.S. military. Michael Waddington is a real-life character out of a film of A Few Good Men times 10. He travels the world representing American military members who find themselves in trouble, from the battlefields in Iraq to bases in Europe and throughout the USA. Waddington has been involved in hundreds of unbelievable criminal cases involving the U.S. military. He also teaches lawyers across the USA winning trial techniques. His cases have been covered by Rolling Stone, CNN, The New York Times, 60 Minutes, Nightline, The New Yorker, and others. Wow. Welcome, Michael. I appreciate you being on the show. You've had quite an illustrious career.
Well, thanks, Shelley, for having me here. Yeah, well, I've had a pretty exciting career, and I'm only just getting started. I've been doing this for 20 years, but I feel like I'm 25 years young. I just keep busy and keep, having new fun cases. So I'm really glad to be here. And we talked earlier about some of the stories and cases that I've been in, and I'm happy to share that with your audience.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I guess I'll kind of leave it up to you. Would you like to get started on how you got started? Did you always dream of being a military lawyer? Or?
No, not at all. I grew up in the late 70s and 80s in Pennsylvania near Pittsburgh. Uh-huh. And if any of your audience was around back then, the Cold War was raging, movies like Rambo, Chuck Norris movies, Top Gun. The Cold War in the military is a big part of the Hollywood scene and what I was, watching growing up. So my brothers and I, there's three of us, we all enlisted when we were 18, and I had no plans of being a lawyer. I didn't even know the Army had lawyers. And after I did some time as an enlisted soldier, I got commissioned through ROTC, and then I learned about, through the movie A Few Good Men, believe it or not. Until then, I didn't know there were lawyers in the Army. And I saw that movie, and I said, hey, that might not be a bad option. So I was lucky enough to come in. I came in before as a JAG lawyer, as a military lawyer, before 9/11, like that summer. I did my training, with the JAG at the JAG school. That's a school where they train all the military lawyers in Charlottesville, Virginia. And then my wife and I had two babies at the time. Now they're grown up. We were sent down to Fort Gordon, Georgia on September 10th, 2001. And this story sounds like it's unbelievable, but it's true. I was in there meeting with my boss. He was telling me, where to look for houses, welcoming me to the Army, because it was my first day on the job. It was September 11th. And so That took me on a big turn, because, I figured I would do some time and I would be a prosecutor. Who knows what I was going to do in the JAG Corps. But 9/11 obviously changed the military and changed the world. And so before you know it, I was first doing wills for all of the Georgia National Guard, who all got, activated after 9/11. And then next thing I know, I'm defending soldiers accused of alleged war crimes happening in Iraq and Afghanistan. And that was the kind of the beginning of my current career, because I started to realize that there were a lot of soldiers out there that are just being railroaded. And unless you're in that situation where you have a family member or you have been accused of something, you don't really understand the power of the government and this power that they have. They can get anybody they want and put them in jail. And a lot of times they don't have a defense. So, in 2006, I got out of the Army and I joined my wife. My wife's a lawyer as well. And we opened up our own private practice. And since then, we've been representing military members with all sorts of crimes all over the world. It's mostly felonies we do, but we do cases. We do cases. We've done cases in the Middle East, in Europe, Japan, all over the United States. So we keep pretty busy, and our clients are really, for the most part, we love them. They're service members. We have everything from, a brand new E1 who's 18 years old in the Army to people that are members of SEAL Team 6. We've defended, you name it, we've done it. And so I really love my job. And like I said, I'm 25 years young. I'm almost 47 years old now. But this job keeps me young, and I get to interact with these service members on a daily basis and help them out.
So how is the military adjudication process different from civilian law? Are there differences?
Yes, there are differences. So I'll hit the big ones. So in the military side, it's a system that's self-contained. So it's self-contained in that the chain of command runs the system, the chain of command runs the prosecutions, the chain of command picks the jury, and it's a chain of command who charges you and decides whether or not you're going to go to court. And that could be pretty intimidating if you're an accused, because imagine if you work for a corporation and the president of the corporation, let's say Coca-Cola, the president of the corporation had his own prosecutors, his own laws. He picked the jury, he or she picked the jury, and that president of Coca-Cola said, you did something that is wrong according to our rules. I'm going to put you in jail. And they were allowed to do that. And then they picked the jury. So that's kind of how those are some of the differences. We do use the same rules of evidence as federal court. A lot of the crimes are the same, like murder is the same as you would find on the civilian side. But when you get in front of the jury or the judge, then things get really different. Like the jury that we would have currently, because they've changed the rules a few times over the past couple of years, but the current jury is 8 people, and all people on your jury outrank you, and all of the people on the jury were picked by the commanding officer that started the court case. And so you might be, let's say you're a sergeant. Join the meeting. A sergeant, and you're accused of sexual assault. It would be the general or the admiral that would pick the jury. And they do not need to convince, the prosecution doesn't need to convince 8 out of 8 or 12 out of 12 like you would have in the civilian side. They need to only convince 2/3 or 6 of your guilt. So if 2 people on the jury were not convinced that you were guilty and they voted not guilty, you would still be convicted. And the other difference is it's the jury that sentences you. So, which can be good and bad. If you're a bad soldier or sailor or Marine, you don't want the jury sentencing you. Whereas if let's say your client is, he served, or he or she served a lot in combat and had a lot of medals and did a lot of good things, then the jury might be a better option for you. It depends on the crime, but those are the big differences. You get a lawyer in the military assigned to you, like a public defender. That they call them in the Army Trial Defense Service. It's usually a fairly young lawyer. And you could also hire a civilian, because I know some of your listeners are probably saying, well, how do you do these cases if you're not in the military? One of your major rights that you have is you have the right to go with a military attorney, or you could hire a civilian lawyer, but you have to pay the lawyer. So the people that we represent have to pay us out of pocket to come and represent them. But we do work with, like I will be in court representing a soldier or Marine or a sailor next to their military lawyer in front of a military jury, and I'll be the only person in there wearing a suit. So it's kind of a unique situation, but it allows the soldiers to have, someone with experience, like 20 years of experience, to come and represent them versus, 6 months of experience.
Now, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm incorrect, when you're a JAG lawyer, you can work both the prosecution and the defense, either or. It's whatever you're assigned. Am I correct? Correct.
Right. So most JAGs that are on active duty, they have served as a prosecutor for some period of time. It's usually, 1 to 3 years. And a lot of times they move on to other jobs. Not all of JAGs have done defense. So the answer to your question is yes, you could do both. Most JAGs have done prosecution. Sometimes they have done both. It's probably about 25% that actually defend soldiers. Most of them go on to do, there's all these different areas of military law you can do. Prosecution is only one. But the defense job it's a somewhat small part of the JAG Corps. The thing is, when you watch TV like JAG, and there was a show that came out about a year ago called The Code, it made it seem like the defense and the prosecution are like buddies and they're always hanging out and just trying to get the best outcome for justice. It's not like that at all. Some people are buddies. You don't necessarily want some guy defending you who is best friends with the prosecution. That's not advisable.
One would think so.
No, what happens, I did a case in Iwakuni, Japan. It was a Marine I was representing. And I showed up to the court and I was sitting outside with my client, and the prosecution comes rolling in his car. And, the defense lawyer gets out of the car with them, and they're like joking and have coffees in their hand. And I'm like, and this prosecutor had been really busting our client's chops, like really giving us a hard time. And I'm like, you guys like carpool? He goes, no, man, we're roommates. Oh, and so he lived with the defense lawyer, and that was a serious case. Lived with and went out drinking with and was good friends with the prosecution. So that's generally not advisable. It's usually but usually it's pretty contentious because, the prosecution wants to win. I mean, that's the same way in civilian or military. Prosecutors, whether they're prosecuting a guilty person, an innocent person, or someone that may be guilty, they want to win the case because a lot of times it's about the ego. So once you charge someone and then you get the general or the admiral to sign off and say, yeah, charge this person, send them to jail, they generally don't back down. Right. They're gonna like take that, they're gonna ride that horse into town and not quit, because then they would have to admit that they were wrong. And so even if you have someone who's innocent, we end up fighting those cases, very aggressively to try to get the best outcome possible. And it's actually sometimes more difficult to defend someone who's innocent, believe it or not, than someone who's guilty. Like defending a guilty person for me, because I get asked this all the time, like, how do you defend someone who's guilty? I love defending people that are guilty. We just try to expose the holes in the government's case and get them the best result possible. Sometimes we win, sometimes we don't. And they want us to fight for them and make sure that we leave no stone unturned. But in the end, if they do get convicted and they're guilty, then it's a little easier to sleep at night. The problem is, if you're representing someone who's innocent that you think is being framed, that can be very difficult, psychologically and as a defense lawyer, because you're sitting there with someone that is getting railroaded. And often you can do what you can do, but if the deck is stacked, it can be a tough fight.
And I would imagine it's pretty intimidating when you're dealing with the military. I mean, that's quite the machine. You probably had some serious battles with some of your cases.
Well, it's the biggest bureaucracy in America.
Yeah.
Anyone who's listening that's been in the military, they know that you can be very patriotic. You could love I love my time in the Army. I had great experiences. My son, actually, who's 21 years old right now, he's deployed. He's in the Army. He's over in the Middle East right now, and he has the same experiences that I had, years ago. It's the bureaucracy that gets old, that is kind of, because it's such a large organization. But it's the friendships you make, it's the camaraderie. Those are the things that make it worth the time. Make your time worth it,
So just another quick question. You're still guilty until proven innocent in military court. Am I correct?
Well, you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. However,
innocent until proven guilty. Did I say that incorrectly? I'm sorry.
Well, you got it right, but you said the politically correct version. You didn't get it politically correct. You're innocent, quote, until proven guilty, but you're really guilty until proven innocent.
As far as the military is concerned? Okay.
Yeah. No, in serious. We sometimes ask the jury, who, because when we do the jury questioning, like, who here thinks that he did something wrong? And like 3 of them will raise their hands out of however many we have there. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones that I know are honest, because if you were in the military and you're a colonel, you know that they didn't just round up some random person usually and put them in there. Usually some agent said the person did something, and there's something out there, like at least a statement or a complaint or something. But the ones who leave their hand down, they're like, no, I truly believe this man is 100% innocent. I don't really trust those jurors, because they're just kind of saying what they're supposed to say so they don't get kicked off.
Yeah. Makes sense. We're talking to Michael Waddington, a former Army JAG attorney and author of Battle Mind, a military legal thriller. He has defended some very, very prominent cases. It's going to be very interesting. He's going to be talking about some of these cases when we come back here on TNCRadio.LIVE. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show. I'm Shelley Johnson here with Tom Couric. Stay tuned for more coming up. The best GPS for truck drivers. Although there's several GPS apps, it's better for truck drivers to rely on a system that's specifically geared toward their type of work. Smartphone apps lack the ability to show truckers the roads that are inaccessible to trucks. Buying the right GPS for trucking can be tricky and overwhelming. To save you from tons of research and reading reviews, the Truckers Network has listed the best GPS devices for truck drivers in 2020. Check out their website. Here's a brief list. Garmin Diesel 580 LMTS. The Garmin Diesel 580 LMTS is an easy-to-use GPS with hands-free Bluetooth and built-in Wi-Fi. It features customized truck routing for the size and weight of your truck. It also provides helpful predictive route warnings for dangerous curves, steep grades, bridge heights, weight limits, and more. You can find nearby hotels, restaurants, and parking with their easy brake planning. This GPS is truly made for the long haul. Other features include customized truck routing, built-in directory of truck and trailer services, easy brake planning, and service history log. The TomTom Trucker 620. The TomTom Trucker 620 is a 6-inch GPS navigation device that allows you to get the most out of your driving time. The TomTom Trucker 620 can connect by Wi-Fi, and that lets you update without a computer. It makes calling and messaging easier by providing hands-free calling and smartphone services. It also provides free real-time traffic updates and truck maps throughout North America. Other features include battery lifetime up to an hour. It reads messages out loud from a smartphone. It's compatible with Siri and Google Now. It has customized truck routing. The Garmin Drive Smart 61 LMTS. This Garmin device makes trucking much easier. The Navigator features a collection of smart features, in addition to easy-to-follow instructions and helpful driver alerts. It also provides hands-free calling, live traffic information, and built-in Wi-Fi. With this GPS device, all you have to do is look up and drive. Other features include voice-activated navigation, Bluetooth calling, select live parking, and a rechargeable lithium-ion battery that lasts up to an hour.
Want to advertise on TNCRadio.LIVE? Take advantage of great discounts for 2021. Check out the sponsors page at TNCRadio.LIVE or send email to info@TNCRadio.LIVE.
You're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE. This is the Truckers Network radio show, and I'm Shelley Johnson with my co-host Tom Couric. We're talking with Michael Waddington, a former JAG attorney and author of Battle Mind, a military legal thriller. Michael's defended some very prominent cases. In our previous segment, he was talking a little bit about how military law works and everything to kind of give our listeners a background. Tom, you said you had a question for Michael.
Yeah, Michael. As a driver who's watched a lot of these shows over the years, whether it's something Law and Order or JAG, NCIS, some of the movies that have JAG elements in them, is it halfway accurate, completely inaccurate? You know, how does a real-life situation compare to that of what's portrayed on TV?
That's a great question. There's so many different shows out there. Some are accurate, some are not. What I find in watching a lot of these legal drama shows is the courtroom drama they have way off. And I don't know if it's because the writers are from Hollywood and they have this perspective and idea of what happens in court, but a lot of times they get it really wrong. Like, for example, the show JAG. JAG is basically a soap opera set in the Navy JAG Corps, where there's this idea that this pilot he's a lawyer and he flies a jet and he's flying around the country investigating crimes. Completely fictional. What I think that the typical case that we do, if you want to, I don't know if you've ever seen the show Ray Donovan, where he goes around. I mean, he commits crimes. We're not committing crimes, but he goes around trying to help people out by kind of, fighting the good fight for some unsavory people. I think it's kind of like that mixed with A Few Good Men, because A Few Good Men was kind of accurate, aside from the part where the colonel confesses. That would never happen. But the idea, if you remember A Few Good Men, and this is from the 90s with Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise played everybody guilty in that show. Everyone's like, oh, Tom Cruise is this great lawyer. I encourage you, if you haven't seen it in the past couple of years, to rewatch it. Tom Cruise was a terrible lawyer in the show. He was supposed to be a terrible lawyer. I didn't realize that at the time, but in there he talks about how he pled, I think it was out of 40 cases, he had already pled 39 guilty, really didn't even investigate or stand up for them. He wanted to get a set of steak knives in the show, so he was going to try to plead his 40th case guilty, because I guess if you pled that many guilty, that's pretty accurate, because we sometimes roll into these cases and into these military installations, and you have a brand new lawyer you have one defense lawyer defending, 50 cases at one time. I'm saying a brand new defense lawyer who's been at a law school for 2 years. On the other side, you have 5 prosecutors, 2 senior prosecutors, 10 CID or NCIS agents. They have the victims' lawyers. And so the defense lawyer is very outnumbered and outgunned. So a lot of times they do plead guilty. So that show's accurate. JAG isn't. There was a show that came out last year. It got canceled on CBS. It was called The Code. And I had started to consult with the producers of that show. And one of the issues was it was not very authentic. Okay. It was about these defense lawyers and prosecutors who travel around the country and around the world working together to get the truth. Like, your job as a defense lawyer is not to get the truth. What the show ended up getting a lot of bad. They ended up not using consultants for the actual show, and the show ended up getting canceled because feedback from users, from what I was reading, reviewers, was that it was so ridiculous and inauthentic. Like, there was a colonel who was wearing around major's rank. There was a soldier in combat wearing just certain gear that any standard, anyone who's been in the Army one day knows that wouldn't happen. So the shows vary. That's a long-winded answer to your question, but the shows vary. Some are good, some are bad. We're actually right now working. She mentioned the book Battle Mind. That's a fictional book, but it's loosely based on a lot of real life stuff. And we're working right now, myself and a writer, on trying to get that show created and turned into a television show.
Oh, very
And that one is going to be, the defense lawyer is not going to be the shiny do-gooder. He's going to be sort of a criminal himself as he tries to win the case, because he's fighting against a bunch of, in the show and in the book, he's fighting against criminals, AKA the prosecution and the investigators, to try to get the fair outcome. So in order to fight them and get a fair case, to get justice, he really needs to start fighting dirty. And that's kind of the premise of that show. And there's never been a show like that out there, where the military defense lawyer is actually a pretty savvy, he fights dirty. So that's something that we're working on now. And I think it's something that's more realistic, and people that watch it could probably relate to it more than, kind of a soap opera version of the show.
Sure. And having been a JAG attorney, you definitely could lend the credibility and all of the proper information. And I would think it'd be super interesting to really get into that particular character. I think that people would say, yeah, this guy's good as a defense lawyer.
Yeah. And there was a show called The Good Wife that was on a few years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I helped them out, the producers and the writers, with 2 of the episodes for that. So if you're interested it's fictional and it's CBS, so they can't be too dirty, there's no curse words or anything. Right. But there's a show called Whiskey Tango an episode called Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, another one called Double Jeopardy. They came out in the second and third season. Mm-hmm. I helped them out with the characters on that and the military scenes. So in the show, The Good Wife, the main character in The Good Wife and her associate, they go into a military court. That's pretty accurate. And the judge in there is actually based on a real judge. The defense lawyer is based on some defense lawyers that I know. And you'll kind of get a taste for what it's like in military court. If you watch particularly the one called Double Jeopardy, mm-hmm. like, for example, my wife and I, we tried a case in Germany. That was probably about 3 weeks ago. So Germany was under a massive lockdown. So we were allowed to come in with an exception from the embassy. And we went straight down to Kaiserslautern, which is a city in Germany that has military installation. And, you know, they were like a little bit COVID crazy over there. So we weren't allowed to leave our hotel. We went from the court to the hotel and back, and we had to like order pizza and stuff. And so, but in that case, we started at 7 a.m. and we went until like 10 at night. So wow. It's not like in civilian court where you start at 9:30 and then there's a lunch break. They rock and roll. So you really have to stay in very good, excellent physical, mental shape in order to do these cases, because they're just exhausting.
Oh, I bet.
Particularly if you're sitting there having to do, arguments and cross-examine witnesses. So, but that's the reason I bring that up is because in the Good Wife episode, that is what was happening. And they kind of showed at the military courts, they start early, they go late, there's no breaks. And the judges sometimes, and they don't need to, I don't know why they do this, but they sometimes act like it's like we're in a super hurry to get it done. We might have a week for the trial and they want to get it done in 2 days. The problem is, if it's your son or daughter or husband on trial, you don't want to be sitting in the room watching a judge act like it's a sprint. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
And it's not fair. And the jury gets tired. And so we try to slow it down if we need to, or speed it up too, if it's going to be beneficial to us. But it's, keeps us on our toes.
It would. What are some of the more interesting cases that you've done? I've done. So I've had. Well, I'll tell you an interesting one that I mentioned to you earlier. This one didn't get a ton of media attention. It started to get media attention, but it happened the same week that Michael Vick was convicted or accused of dogfighting. This was like maybe 12 years ago, and so it was a case that came from Fallujah, and there was 2 battles of Fallujah. I'm not going to get into the details of that because I'm not an expert on the battles themselves, but there were 2 major engagements, and they were pretty costly to the Americans because basically Al-Qaeda in Iraq embedded themselves. Like literally they locked themselves, some of them in concrete bunkers. They had to be, burnt out, killed. It was street to street fighting. And so in order to stop the fighters from fleeing, we set off a cordon. The Army did with the Marine Corps, and we basically surrounded the town, and they were letting women and children out with certain exceptions. And so bottom line is there's a FOB, a forward operating base called FOB Mercury, and it was not far from the city of Fallujah. And they had hit that front gate with a vehicle-borne ID, blew it up, killed some people. And it was just a pretty bad situation for the troops over there. And so they captured this guy named Joe Millionaire. That was his nickname. He was in Iraqi Special Forces. I think he was a colonel under Saddam Hussein. And he was wanted, but he wasn't captured yet. And he was going around paying insurgents and other people to do bombings and, to shoot Americans, things like that. And that's why they called him Joe Millionaire, because when they captured him, he had so much cash on him that he was using to pay people. So in that case, my client was a cook. He was a master sergeant cook, and he ran the kitchen over there, and he was in charge of food and supplies and all that. And the bottom line is they captured this Joe Millionaire. They captured all these insurgents from the battle, the ones that weren't killed, and they put them into this forward operating base, Mercury, little jail they had set up. And you're not supposed to keep
prisoners on the front because it's been connected to a lot of war crimes. Even in World War II, you're supposed to move prisoners away from the front lines not have people who just potentially lost a best friend guarding the prisoners.
Right.
And for various reasons. That's our doctrine. Mm-hmm. And so you're supposed to put them in the rear. But the thing is, we didn't have people, we didn't have bodies. So they had the cooks that were running security at the prison because they had nobody else.
Oh, wow.
And so the prisoners with this Joe Millionaire guy had try to stage a little uprising. They got a hold of a weapon and it turned into a pretty dangerous situation. They had to beat him down, get the weapon back. And so the colonel in charge said, I don't want any weapons anywhere near this prisoner holding cell. And what it was concertina wire stacked up, nothing too, they could have escaped if they wanted to. But the problem is our soldiers, in this case, the cooks, they didn't have anything. So to guard them with, like protective gear, shields, riot gear. Right. And so anyway, they went into a storage locker and they found a bunch of Louisville Sluggers in baseballs and things like that, and baseball gear. And that was sent over by the Louisville Slugger Company. You remember we invaded Iraq, we thought that they were going to just welcome us with open arms. And then, the people would be, super pro-American. And so a lot of folks, Americans tend to be generous internationally and within our country. Most Americans do tend to donate and try to help people out. And so this company and other companies, they donated sporting equipment. What better way to convert the local Iraqi from joining the insurgency to give them baseballs, right? That was the theory. And so anyway, they took the baseball bats because Fallujah was under siege. And so they were guarding the prisoners with the baseball bats. One thing leads to another. I'll skip over the gory part, but it turned into a court-martial years later because somebody wrote on, Amnesty International. It's a human rights website, an organization. They have a website. I'm talking 10, 12 years ago. So they had a blog you could post on. And so somebody was posting on this and they ran with the story. And a lot of the information really wasn't sourced. So let's say I posted a story about a bunch of people at Fallujah doing all these terrible things. And an organization that is a little bit anti-army decides to write a story without interviewing anyone. So they wrote an article called The Murderous Maniacs. And that got a lot of attention. And it ended up getting the attention of some people in Congress and some other organizations. So they decide, like the Army likes to have knee-jerk reactions, as our government does in general. Like if they hear something, they, instead of investigating, a lot of the government officials and bureaucrats have a knee-jerk reaction. So they got to court-martial someone. So they court-martialed my client, and they accused him of a bunch of crimes, him and all the cooks. A lot of them got charged with attempted murder, hitting detainees with baseball bats. And that thing went to court. Now, back at the time, we were dealing with Abu Ghraib just before that. That's the Iraq prison where there were some abuses happening. So, Congress and, senators, they're all looking to make an example. And so we took that one to trial. And this ties into the Michael Vick story. We're in court, and the whole front row was filled with reporters. And we had cameras outside, and there are a few camera clips out there of me walking out of court. But around lunchtime, you could hear like little phones buzzing. This is back in the day when they didn't have like really elaborate phones, but those flip phones. Phones are buzzing. People start scurrying out of the room. Like all the reporters left. And one of them, we took a break, and I caught up with the reporter from the Associated Press. And I'm like, what is going on? Because we figured if they heard if the public heard the true story, we would get support for our client, and then it would be good for him. And then he says, Michael Vick was just indicted for dogfighting. And so they all drove off to the Richmond, Virginia courthouse. And an indictment is not a huge deal. I mean, it's just they didn't need to be there, but they wanted to be there because. So it's kind of funny. They went to watch a dogfighting case. An indictment in this case had to do with like people allegedly breaking people's skulls with baseball bats. So in the end, my client was he got convicted of, I think, one thing, and he got a reprimand. He was able to retire. But it's kind of funny. I always tell people that in the military, like if you could kill someone and the jury might be like, he deserved it, but you can't touch a dog. And because I've had cases and seen cases where people are just even mean to the dog, and that takes their punishment from something reasonable to like the max. So, and the thing is, because we love dogs, right? Most people love dogs.
Sure.
And dogs are your man and woman's best friend, and they're usually our best friend around our house and our companion. So you don't want to go around abusing dogs. That's worse than murder to some people. Sure. So that's one story that I mentioned to you earlier that I thought was interesting.
You've got quite a few here. I definitely would like you to maybe highlight some of the other cases because it's fascinating. People don't have the opportunity to really get to some of the inside information and find out what the process was behind all of this and in the defense, especially in military court. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show. I'm Shelley Johnson here with my co-host Tom Couric. We're talking with Michael Waddington, a former JAG attorney and author of Battle Mind, a military legal thriller. Definitely stay tuned for more. This is great information. Quick and healthy meals for truckers. Life on the road can make it challenging for truckers to find a healthy meal. Truckers are on the go and sometimes on a strict time frame to get their loads delivered on time. Stopping at a truck stop or fast food restaurant seems like the most convenient option. Although it may be more convenient, eating unhealthy gas station food can take a toll on one's health. Plus, it's more expensive. Stopping at a grocery store and picking up healthy foods can benefit truckers in many ways. Eating healthy improves mood, health, and well-being. Consider investing in appliances like a cooler, slow cooker, lunchbox, or a microwave. This makes eating healthy on the roads much easier. Breakfast, the most important meal of the day, especially for truckers. Eating a good breakfast helps keep your energy up. Oatmeal is a quick and easy healthy breakfast. You can make it in under 3 minutes, and it's easy to store in your cab. Adding some fresh fruits and nuts in your oatmeal can make it even more delicious. Yogurt also makes a great breakfast. It's high in protein and can keep you full for a long time. Try adding some fruits, nuts, and honey. Toast and peanut butter. You'll need a toaster or toaster oven for this one. Peanut butter contains high levels of protein, fiber, and healthy fats. It also gives you endless energy. Protein bars are the quickest breakfast option. It's safe to eat while driving. If you're in a hurry, protein bars will make a great breakfast. Lunch. It can be very tempting to pull over and stop at your favorite restaurant. Lunchtime is a great opportunity to make healthier choices. Check out some of our favorite healthy lunch meals. You can see all the details on app.thetruckersnetwork.net. Bento Box Lunch has loads of healthy, clean foods. It's quick and easy, too. Burrito bowls are full of fresh veggies, and this recipe takes you 10 minutes to make. Ham sandwich, a classic easy lunch. Chicken salad takes about 30 minutes to prepare, but it's well worth it. Serve it on lettuce or any type of bread you like. Dinner. This is where a slow cooker will definitely come in handy. Check out what every trucker needs in their truck for 2020's blog post. We list some of our favorite 12V slow cookers. Here are the recipes. Honey garlic chicken and veggies. This is the easiest one-pot recipe ever. Hardly takes any effort at all. Beef stew makes a great dinner. You can enjoy it all year round. Whole roasted chicken in your slow cooker is a recipe every trucker should try. It's delicious and can help keep you fed for a couple of days. Ground beef and potatoes are amazing and will only take you around 15 minutes to prepare. Check out the recipes on app.thetruckersnetwork.net. You're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE. Remember to tune into the Truckers Network radio show with Shelley Johnson, weekdays at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern. You're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE. This is the Truckers Network radio show. I'm Shelley Johnson with my co-host Tom Couric. We're talking with Michael Waddington, a former JAG attorney and author of Battle Mind, a military legal thriller. Michael, while we were on break, you said you defended someone on SEAL Team 6 What was that case all about?
Yeah, well, this case sounds ridiculous. If you don't know anything about the military other than what you see on TV, you'll be thinking this is made up. But it's a case where they court-martialed. His name's Petty Officer Aaron Howard. It's all over the news. You could Google him. This guy is really an American hero who served in SEAL Team 6 for several years. Before that, he was in other SEAL teams, and he had part of his face blown off and various deployments. He was wounded. He had part of his face blown off, and one of his deployments had to have his face reconstructed. He was the SEAL Team 6 Sailor/SEAL of the Year for 2016 because of some of his actions. So this guy is like the tip of the spear. But as I told you during the break, there are some rules in these special forces units, such as you don't hit on another guy's mistress. Even if he's married, you don't hit on her or even make it seem like that. And
probably in civilian life, that's not advisable.
Yeah, I guess unless you want to get shot. But so this guy was accused of catfishing. You know, you want me to explain what that is? I'm not sure.
Sure. For those that don't know what that means.
Okay. I mean, basically, he was allegedly pretending to be someone else and talking to different women. And so an investigation started because some of the women, it had nothing to do with nude photos or anything like that. One of the women fell in love with this fake person. And then turns out she thought he was fake, and then he was fake. And it really blew open this scandal up at SEAL Team 6 that involved like guys hitting on other people's wives, their mistresses. And then several people came forward and said, yeah, I think I was catfished too by a suspicious, guy from Tinder. I mean, and so anyway, and these were all women who worked at SEAL Team 6. You know, one was the nutritionist, one was, she dealt with like physical training, and one had to work with their radios because, up at SEAL Team 6, they have so many shooters or operators. Then they have like 5 times as many people that work in support. Everything from the person who does their PR to the person who's like, they actually have a nutritionist team that follows them around. They have a jiu-jitsu team, an instructor who his full-time job is teaching these guys jiu-jitsu. They have someone who does cryotherapy. I mean, there's a lot of money that goes into maintaining them. So anyway, this turned into a court-martial, and my client went and took a polygraph. This is before he had a lawyer. He takes a polygraph. He passes it. He takes another polygraph. He passes it about whether or not he catfished. And you're probably wondering, why isn't this guy out taking out terrorists? Why are they doing this? And again, it ties back to one of the women was involved with one of the people in command. And she was so offended that someone could do this to her that, and I would say involved like in an affair. And so they raked this guy over the coals. It turned into probably the hardest fought, the dumbest court martial I've done in the past 3 years, in the sense that it's not even really a crime, but it turned into one of the most time consuming, hardest fought cases, because not only were we taking on the Navy, we're taking on SEAL Team 6, or DevGru is what they're called. So every time we called witnesses, they would block our witnesses. Every time it got to the point where they threw this guy, Howard, off of the SEAL team. They didn't take his trident, you get as a Navy SEAL. They left him with it, and then they put him over on a trash cleaning detail for 2 years, and they took his pay. They basically raked him over the coals and tried to just break him. But he's a Navy SEAL, so, I mean, it's not that easy to break him. And so anyway, we fought it out in court, and the government charged him with things such as impersonating a person. Because, in the military, you can make up charges if you're the government. So long as it affects, quote, good order and discipline, you can invent a charge.
That's scary.
It is very scary. So they invented all of the charges on the charge sheet were not found in the manual for court martial. They were not actual offenses that you would find in any court anywhere. They made them up. So this idea of impersonating a person, it was disruptive to the good order and discipline. So I argued to the judge, that's like me walking out of this room and saying, hey, I'm Judge Lucan. That was his name. If I go down the hall and say, hey, I'm Judge Lucan, you mind if I use your copier? I just committed a federal felony. Like that's how dumb that is.
Yeah.
He ruled against us. 4 of the charges out of the 8 got dropped, but on that one, it went forward. And anyway, Howard ended up not getting kicked out and not getting kicked out of the Navy. But then they turned around as soon as the case was done. They turned around and the DevGru SEAL Team 6 turned around and they made like a little administrative board, which they can run in-house. Like they can do whatever they want in-house. That organization can, which includes like they can do whatever they want and no one's going to question them. And so they kicked the guy out with an other than honorable discharge, and they scheduled his board, his separation board, like his termination hearing. They asked me for my schedule, and they scheduled it on a date that they knew I had another trial. And they said, well, if you're under this rule, if your lawyer's not available, you're not entitled to the lawyer of your choice. So I wasn't even there when they kicked him out. And so that's the SEAL Team 6 story I was telling you about. So we do everything from murder to sexual assault which is a huge thing now in the military, these sex assault crimes.
Right.
But that's an example of kind of one that's silly. And that I'd rather have Howard out there, fighting and hunting down bad people than getting railroaded and cleaning toilets.
Well, what a waste when you think about it. It takes a lot to become a SEAL, and being on trash detail, no.
Yeah, I mean, we have a video of him, and he's a funny guy. In the sense that he had a great sense of humor. He would send me videos of the job they would assign him. Okay, your job today is to go with all the people who have already been convicted, and you're going to go paint the curb. So we have a guy who is the SEAL Team 6 SEAL of the Year, and just to understand, I mean, the amount of years that he put into training and shooting. Yeah. I mean, he spent years and years and years, and many bullets came out of his barrel because those guys are all good shooters. I mean, good shooters is an understatement. They're the best, some of the best marksmen. They're not the best, but necessarily, because in the Marines and Army, and I don't want to denigrate anyone's service, but they're great shooters. Okay. Mm-hmm. But he did hundreds and hundreds of different jumps with, all sorts of risky jumps, dives, you name it. And to have him painting curbs is somewhat petty. But that's something we run into in the Navy quite a bit. Not so much the Army, is that because of the way it's structured, you have a lot more vindictive prosecutions, I think, that I see. Because a lot of times it's a ship and you have the captain of the ship. It's sort of a very tightly controlled organization versus the Army. Like, for example, at Fort Bragg, the general doesn't care really what's happening down at some unit, in the sense that, some guy got accused of catfishing. He's probably not going to start a court martial, waste everybody's time, because that general has bigger fish to fry. And you would think that the SEAL Team 6 group guy does, but like I said, if you rub the wrong person the wrong way, they will follow you and hunt you down. Yeah, and like we couldn't get a single witness. They blocked all of his witnesses. Like, these are guys he served in combat with. They were given an order to not participate and help his case as as a sentencing witness or a character witness, or they would be shunned. And so we have people telling us that, like, I want to help him, but they're going to do me in, and I'm not going to. I worked so hard to get here, and so we literally, we were stuck with his prior people who were already retired to come in and support him, and then just his military records, because everyone on DevGru was told to not. If they support him, they're a traitor, basically, which is, come on, we're out there. Their main mission is to defend the Constitution of the United States. Part of that is due process.
Exactly. Wow. Scorched earth policy. That makes it real tough if you're falsely accused, and it gives you a challenge for sure. Go ahead.
I was going to tell you, in that case, it got so dirty that the Navy, the defense lawyer they gave me in the Navy, they started coming after him, and we had to get him off the case. And he was a good lawyer. We had to go to the Marine Corps, and we went over to the Marine Corps and said, "Hey, Marine Corps, can you give us a lawyer that is not afraid to fight?" And so the Marine Corps gave us a defense lawyer. So I did that case with a Marine at my side, which is pretty cool because I like working with the Marine Corps. But the Navy, because of all the shenanigans, ended up, they didn't even defend their own sailor.
That's bad.
Wow.
And as a lawyer, you would feel maybe that your safety was threatened in that kind of situation. I was concerned about my safety and my client's safety when the judge ordered all of his team, so about 18 operators, because they were supposed to give statements, and they refused to. They blew off the judge because they can do whatever they want because they're still Team 6. But the judge got mad, and then he ordered them all to come into court. And so when you order them to come into court in a public setting, and it's an order from a captain in the Navy, they all got pissed. And so I had to go into the room, and figure out which witnesses were there. And so I'm in a room with about 16 SEAL Team 6 operators who want to kill me. Trying to figure out which one is up next as a witness. It was a great experience, though. Yeah, I imagine, and definitely an adrenaline rush at the very least.
I'm not sure if I agree with your definition of great, but we'll run with it. I learned a few things, but I would do it again. I think that you get in these situations where it's like whenever you think back to if you ever been in a tough situation, whether it's like in growing up in school where you got to confront the bully or confront the bully as an adult in real life. There's like that line, like that, like you're kind of held back because by society and your own conscience and everything, and whatever your character is, but then sometimes like, listen, I need to punch this person in the face, or I need to, if I don't run in there and save that person or do this or that, I can't live with myself. So sure. I'm a little bit crazy in that regard. I don't get really scared. From because what are they going to do to me? I mean, seriously, they could try to take my law license, but that would actually scare me. But they're not gonna kill me or anything. And if they do, I don't know. I don't think that they would do anything like that.
Michael, I wanted you to let listeners know you've got some great stories here. Where can everyone find your book? It's called Battle Mind, a military legal thriller. I bet it's one you don't want to put down.
Yeah, well, Battle Mind is a book about my last case in the Army, and I resigned over that case because I was defending a soldier that was being railroaded and scapegoated for some of our torture programs we had overseas. Mm-hmm. Back then, real quick, the U.S. government claimed we didn't torture. We did torture. The CIA tortured, and whenever dead bodies started showing up, the CIA is not going to be blamed.
TNCRadio.LIVE, your commercial driver navigation station.
Hi, this is Tom Kelly, managing partner of IMSICO, LLC, doing business as TNCRadio.LIVE. The website TNCRadio.LIVE and any content or podcast related to the website are copyrights of IMSICO, LLC, copyright 2021. All rights reserved. Any redistribution or reproduction of all or any part of the contents in any form is prohibited other than the following. We welcome you to download and play the publicly available podcast and share with others for personal use. Please acknowledge TNCRadio.LIVE as the source of the material. You may not, except with our express written permission, distribute or commercially exploit the content. And while we endeavor to keep the information up to date and correct, we make no representations or warranties of any kind expressed or implied about the completeness, accuracy, reliability, suitability, or availability with respect to the website, the podcast, or the information, products, services, or related graphics contained on the website or podcast for any purpose. Any reliance you place on such information is therefore strictly at your own risk. For additional information, including details regarding monetization of this podcast, send email to podcasts at TNCRadio.live. .live. .live. .live.